Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our third session of our virtual conference, and it's all about networking. And we've got a panel discussion with some partners that we've worked with over the years to talk about some pretty exciting pieces of work that we've done together, and also just have a chat about what makes effective partnership and networking together. So, to lead the conference, just to explain to everybody that this is actually a webinar. We've got a variety of different ways of doing this through the conference, but this session is a webinar. So that means if you're in attendance, you'll just see the speakers, including myself, and you won't see the other attendees. And if you're an attendee, your video and your microphone will be disconnected for this session. But there is a chance for you to take part by either putting some things in the chat or posing some questions for the panel. And one of my colleagues is manning that and will feed into the panel discussion. So please feel free to take part in that way. And just a note to say that this session is being recorded as all our sessions are. And we want to keep them for posterity, put them up on our YouTube page, and it's something that we'll happily share after the event, and definitely something we can use and dip into as an organisation. So thank you very much for your time. And I'll just kick off. I think I'm going to introduce you to our panelists. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second. And I'm going to put my video back on because I've switched it off. So can I introduce, first of all, Stephanie, you're first up on my screen. You're muted, Stephanie.
There we go. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephanie McGregor-Cross. I'm the team manager for the Falkirk Learning Disability team. It's a health and social work team. We have a number of health and social work professionals that work within the Falkirk Learning Disability team, and we cover all of Falkirk.
Thank you,
Anything
Stephanie.
else you want me to say?
No, that's
Okay.
fine. I'll just do instructions to everybody else, and then we'll come back to you and your specific piece of work with us at the moment. Claire, you're up next on my screen.
Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Claire, and my job title most recently is Operations Manager, but prior to that I was the Network Manager in the Falkirk and Stirling area. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks, Claire. And we're also joined by Paul from TCB.
You'd think I'd expect to turn off my microphone there. Hi, I'm Paul. I work for TCB, which is a charity that helps people to help each other.
Thank you, Paul. And we'll hear a wee bit more from each of the panellists about the kind of particular work they're doing and their connection to neighbourhood networks. Just a bit of a shout out there. We're plugging away for an event that's closing our conference on Thursday night. It's a stay up late event that's on from I think 8 o'clock till 11:30. It's on Zoom. If people want to come and connect through Eventbrite and join in, there'll be music, comedy, entertainment, so feel free to come and connect and join in that part of the session. And Dawn has put something up in the chat, which is a link to that event. Okay, so maybe I could start with yourself, Stephanie, just to describe the kind of work that you do, and I suppose how you've linked in with Neighbourhood Networks over a particular piece of work at the moment.
No problem. Thank you for that, Heather. So in terms of the Falkirk Learning Disability team, as I mentioned, we're a health and social work team. So we have a number of professionals within the team: social workers, occupational therapists, dietetics. We have occupational therapy. Did I say that already? Speech and language therapy. I'm not going to list everyone because I'll be here forever. But our service users tend to be service users that have complex needs. And when I mean complex, I'm talking about maybe they have a learning disability and a dual diagnosis of a mental health issue, or they might have complex physical health needs, or a variety of the above. There might be complex relationships or complex family dynamics that are going on for them. So in terms of just the work that we've done with Neighbourhood Networks, I'll first just say that I really feel that the kind of approach that Neighbourhood Networks takes, the real assets-based, person-centered approach that Neighbourhood Networks takes on, is very well matched to the values base that we operate within our team. We are a team that very much believes in leadership at all levels. So within the team, if somebody, one of the disciplines or one of the professionals has a particular idea or something that they want to develop, we absolutely encourage that, and we encourage learning and sharing that information amongst the team. So we will have a regular kind of service development meetings within our team where perhaps there's a particular issue or concern, and we will work on that together and learn from each other. So I think that kind of relationship that we have with each other and that culture we have as a team really supports how we work with service users. And again, that kind of person-centered, asset-based approach is very much what we do when we work with service users, collaborate and co-produce. So in terms of just that work that we've done with neighbourhood networks. So neighbourhood networks are part of our Falkirk Collaborative. So the Falkirk Collaborative, Falkirk's HSCP, the Health and Social Care Partnership, is involved with some work with Ihop through Health Improvement Scotland, Scottish Government. And neighbourhood networks are a part of that, as are members of social work, health and social work transitions. Our transitions coordinator within the Falkirk HSCP, that's Fiona Douglas, who unfortunately isn't here today. And we also have frontline support staff that work in day support. We have third sector neighbourhood networks. And at the moment, not to forget there, contracts and procurement are also part of it. So there are 4 health and social care partnerships involved in this work. And the purpose of the work is to look at improving outcomes and opportunities for people with learning disabilities who attend day opportunities. At the moment, we're looking at adults. So the 4 HSCPs that are involved in the work are North Ayrshire, Falkirk, as you know, West Lothian, and Perth and Kinross. So in terms of just that kind of work that we're doing, we are building on the principles of the same as you and also the keys to life. So there's 4 particular areas that we're really interested in. And that's around how people with learning disabilities, how their opportunities in relation to living, learning, working and well-being, how we can improve outcomes and opportunities. So in relation to the kind of work that we've done specifically in Falkirk, we have looked at how we can gain services and care reviews to shape and work together to co-produce better outcomes for people. We do know that in Falkirk there have been some concerns about the kind of opportunities available, and we wanted to understand more about that pre-COVID and post-COVID, what the impact has been. We have done some work and we have done some analysis of that work, and we are in a position where we're going to be sharing that in the coming weeks. So we actually have a staff engagement event coming up next week where we'll be discussing that further, because again, staff and staff views are really important to shaping and working together then as a collaborative on how we shape the future and improve outcomes and opportunities. In terms of just that networking, I suppose for me as a frontline social work practitioner that's working with a team, we have found that within health and social work for everyone and all frontline services that COVID has been a really difficult time. There's been times that it's felt really dark and gloomy, and it's been an endless trench at times where we are trying to improve outcomes for people, and there is a lack of services available. Carers and service users feel quite isolated. A lot of things that they did before aren't available. And I think as a social worker, you always want to help people, and not being able to have things that you can offer to support people has been really difficult. So I think the work that we've been doing in the collaborative has really given us a lot of hope. That is a kind of the unanimous message across the 4 HSCPs that are involved. That it's given us a bit of hope, and we've learned a lot from each other. So where we haven't had a solution in our own organization, we've maybe learned from somebody else in relation to that. So I think again, so it's brought new partners, have brought fresh ideas. There's been excitement and interest, a sense of hope when things have felt very pressured. And examples of this would be kind of obviously the work that we've done with services and care. So really getting to the root of what the concerns are and then focusing on what service users and carers want is really important. So we're not going one direction and service users and carers are going another direction. We're matched on what we're hoping to achieve. So that's been really good. And then taking that even further, learning from neighbourhood networks about big planning. So that's going to be the next part of our process is doing some big planning work with neighbourhood networks. Neighbourhood Networks, Heather has, who's obviously CEO of Neighbourhood Networks, who's a member of the Falkirk Collaborative, has set up a forum with panelists. So I'm going to let Heather speak to you a little bit about that in a minute. And just the work beyond that has been just the links that we've made in Falkirk around the Changing Places steering group. So I sit on that steering group because we obviously need to make sure that there's accessible, toilets, facilities across Falkirk so that people can access their communities and not have any exclusions in relation to, where they're going and planning their day around, appropriate facilities being available. one of my colleagues is involved in the collaborative had talked about the time when she'd worked as a support worker and she had to plan her service user's day around what toilets were available. Now that's a huge restriction, and we don't want that to be the way that people have to plan their days. So we're trying to make Falkirk more inclusive and accessible. And within that steering group, we have members of PAMIS, and we also have parents, parent advocates, parent carers that are supporting us with that. And there's a huge number of people across the HSCP that are involved in that. And I suppose the transitions work is another really important thing to mention, and that's that Fiona Douglas is a part of our collaborative, is also the transitions coordinator for Falkirk HSCP. And she is making a lot of links with education and childcare, and she's also involved with some work that Claire is involved with in the Connecting Together group. That I think other members of the panel, I think Fiona and Claire have some plans to get them involved. I think that's you, Paul, that they're going to try and get you involved in this work as well. All right, I'm going to stop there, but I'm going to say one final thing that I've learned through this work is that having good, honest conversations really does improve outcomes. Sharing with each other how we've been feeling over this difficult 2 years has actually supported our carers and service users to be more honest with us, and being more honest with each other has actually allowed us to develop solutions to some tricky situations. So thank you very much. That's all I'm going to say for now, Heather.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. So I'm just going to come in with my experience of being sitting in the collaborative group, and I think there's a number of elements for me, and one is about equal partnership. And as a third sector organisation coming to work with a local authority, it's just so refreshing and so nice to feel that you're part of something, you're an equal valued member of something. And although Neighbourhood Networks doesn't have all the answers, we're a bit of the jigsaw, but there's a lovely climate and culture of sharing and learning from one another and feeling equal. So I think that's for me why it works. I also think there's equality when it comes to sharing the workload as well. I think we're mindful that we can all do our bit, we can all play our part to share some of the work, because this is a big transformative agenda. So we share the load with one another, and that makes a difference. And I think the group functions extremely well. And I think also recognising that we are just part of the picture. And there's all these other pieces of the jigsaw that we need to link into. And one of the pieces of the jigsaw for me was PAMIS, and that's an organisation that supports families that look after somebody who's got profound and multiple learning disabilities. And they were at an event quite early on in the Ihop Collaborative and spoke very movingly about their experience of COVID. And that was a missing piece of the jigsaw for us. And we recognised the value in actually connecting with this group to help influence our thinking going forward. And we meet regularly to have quite just open conversations and discussions about how it really is for families and people with complex needs. And we've got people with lived experience of caring on that group. And that's been an eye-opener for us, I think, and really given us a bit of a steer in a direction of travel. And one of the things that we think will come out of it is a World Cafe event, which is going to focus on lifelong learning opportunities. And there's other kind of pieces of work that folk from PAMIS have been involved in that they can bring to the table about how we get people's views, how we tell their stories. So that's been a really positive connection. And to make that work, we need to commit to that. We need to commit to those relationships going forward. We need to commit to those sessions and really, really actively listen. You talked about listening, Stephanie. I think listening is absolutely crucial to effective relationship and networking. And for people to see tangible things starting to happen, we need to deliver on some of these things as well. So, but there's a real movement for that to happen, and a commitment, and it's a very positive culture to be part of. So we really appreciate it. So thank you. So that's my contribution, I suppose, to the conversation about the collaborative, Stephanie, from my perspective, from Neighbourhood Network's perspective. And as Stephanie touched on, we have some experience of big planning, and we're going to bring that to the table to do some big planning sessions for service users and their families to think aspirationally, what's possible, what could be possible, what's out there that we could tap into and make happen. So I'm going to pass on over to Claire to talk about your experience with networking. getting the work off the ground in Falkirk, and also the continuation of the networking to the Connecting Together group. Claire, if you want to come in here.
Thanks very much, Heather. Yeah, so for me, working in the Falkirk area has been an absolute whirlwind of a journey. It's 4 years now that we've been there, and it feels like it's just yesterday that we set up. Setting up a new network within a new area can be really daunting, and a piece of advice I would give to yourselves is actually getting in and finding the local community, who is the key people that's there and how can you connect with them, because that's something that's really worked for us in building up our networks. So our first network was established in the local town of Denny, and basically to do things differently, we had a launch event. Now usually that would be specifically for neighbourhood networks, but I decided to open that up to the local community and offered them to host some stalls so they could showcase other organisations that are happening locally. So we had people offering to bake us cakes, people are offering to do food, and we had local people coming along from like the NHS, Dates and Mates, sharing all the great things that are happening. And I think because I'd done that very early on, it created that community feeling of networking, that we're not in here to overtake anything, we're here to work together. And I think that's something that stood us in good stead because it got our names out there and we were able to do a lot of partnership working. So for example, Dates and Mates offer a lot of training, which is very relevant for members. So like on internet safety, relationship building, which again helps us our members when they're working towards their outcomes and their support planning. Also, we've had a lot of opportunities to work with other local organisations, and one that I wanted to share with you today was the Forth Valley Pledge Your Veg campaign. Now, during lockdown, a lot of services moved online, including ourselves, which was very successful. But what I recognised in the Falkirk area is that members did not want to get online. They actually wanted to get outside and do some planting and be out in the environment. So we harnessed that and we worked in partnership with the Forth Valley Pledge Your Veg. So they provided handmade planter boxes to us along with seeds, and we hand delivered them to all the members. So some members were moving into their tenancy for the first time, so they were learning how to do soup making online with their digital classes, and then growing their salad and peppers in their veg boxes that we were able to provide them. And that's been really powerful again in bringing people together. Also as well, through word of mouth, we've worked with the hospice, we've been getting involved as well with litter picking, giving back to the local community, and that's something I think that has been really beneficial to get the word spread of what Neighbourhood Networks does. As Stephanie touched on earlier as well, I also host a steering group, and that is a group for professionals to come on board. So again, there's Fiona Douglas, who's the transition workers, there's some senior social workers and occupational therapists that are on that group as well. And basically we share energizer stories. So what's the good things that's happening in the heart of the community, but also what's the challenges and how can we overcome them? And what Stephanie touched on earlier, it's good to have an open and honest conversation, because then that's how we move things forward and hopefully be able to put things in place, which again has a positive impact on the members' lives as well as people in the local community. So that's something that we're really passionate about. And myself and Fiona, we've got a really good working relationship. And from working now for 4 years together, we've shared quite a lot of connections. So for example, I go out to the local high schools and I get invited along to careers events or to speak to the schools, and that's something that I'm doing tomorrow actually. But I've also been doing some YouTube videos, again, to share with parents and carers. So we're reaching a wider audience. Again, we're sharing about the work that we do and also the partnership working opportunities that are available. From that, Heather touched on as well, we started a Connecting Together group, and that has absolutely grown arms and legs, which is fantastic. And we're hoping to offer this across the Forth Valley, so not just Falkirk, because so many different organisations cover such a broad area. But the purpose of the Connecting Together group is we've recognised that everybody's doing amazing work, but how can we pull that together to share our resources so that we're not replicating work or doing things differently? If we can share our resources, it makes our life easier. At the moment, you'll recognise time and money is something that is very sparse. So if we can try and help share the load, that makes things a lot better. So with the Connecting Together group, there's people from like some housing associations. We've got people from local third sector charities, members of the local community, drama groups. We've got TCV involved in it as well. And it is fantastic because, again, it's all about pooling resources. So some people are offering training packages, which if they were to do externally would cost a lot of money, but because they're part of the group, they'll maybe give some free spaces. We've also started a bespoke piece of work on planning for a drama group, because one of the key messages that's came out for the Falkirk group is there's actually no drama facilities that are for individuals with additional needs. There's a lot of barriers in place, but because we've got key pillars of the community and local organisations buying into this, we've now started a project where we're specifically going to try and get some funding. But this is not going to just be open for members, it's going to be open to the local community. Again, promoting independence for people to get out and to start being confident in their community and using those great facilities that are already there and building upon it. So it's been a great success, and I'm really keen on networking, and Paul is another great connection that we've got. Just to leave you with a story before I hand over back to Heather, but we had a young man that joined Neighbourhood Networks during COVID, and they had not stepped outside the front door in over 2 years. They had no connection and zero confidence in themselves. But because we made a connection with Paul and they joined in the Wild Ways Well group, this individual is now getting out on a regular basis. They're going out on a weekly walk. They've got so much confidence in themselves. They've discovered a passion for nature, photography, and they're now keen to explore doing some volunteering. So again, it's just by making that small connection, it's had a massive impact in this individual's life. So I think it's really inspiring each day to wee small things make such a big impact. So thanks, Heather. I'll pass back to you.
Claire, that was a fantastic lead into Paul there and TCV. Paul, if you'd like to come in here and just explain about your work and your connection to Neighbourhood Networks and experiences.
Yeah, so I am a project officer with TCV, which is the Community Volunteering Charity, or the Conservation Volunteers, depending on who we're speaking to. I think we get to change our exact title. But our remit is really to connect people and nature, to connect communities and nature for the benefit of both, so that I think we all know we're living through a conservation crisis, as well as a kind of pandemic and all sorts of things that are going on at the same time, and it's our job to try and bring these two things together, which sounds terrible, bring these two awful things together, but to try and create something good out of these situations. So my personal role within that, so TCV we're a nationwide charity, but my personal role within that is based within Cumbernauld specifically, and it is to try and use the green spaces that are all around all of us right now for the benefit of people's well-being. So to try and use the free resources that are right on our doorstep, which have been the scientific evidence behind their use is overwhelming, that these green spaces can make everyone feel better about their lives, no matter who it is, no matter what your circumstances. Connecting with nature can help in some way. So my job is to try and facilitate that, is to try and break down the barriers which absolutely exist, which prevent people from accessing those green spaces, and try and demonstrate how anyone can get out there and do it. We work through something called the 5 Ways to Wellbeing, which is again a proven mental health framework, and we combine that with that sort of time spent out in nature. So things like going for a walk, things like, I'm trying to think of some of the activities we've done with Neighbourhood Networks, things like shelter building in the outdoors, fire making outdoors, tree planting, learning some things about the wildlife that lives around us, just connecting with the whole wider world that surrounds us all the time, and just realizing that, you know, we are a fundamental part of that. And by exploring that connection, we realize we've got a lot in common with everyone else who's in our community as well. So it kind of helps to bring people together that way. So my connection with Neighbourhood Networks is that you guys were the first people to really take a chance on this. So back in 2017, when this project launched, this green health idea was a very, very new thing. It's now quite established. I was presenting at a conference in Edinburgh to the NHS last week, and it's now something that, you know, all sorts of organisations are interested in. But 5 years ago, it wasn't quite that clear cut, and we found, actually, as a new project starting up in Cumbernauld, we found it very, very difficult to get people to participate and to take part in what we were doing. And the first group who really stepped up and said, "Yeah, we'll try this," was Neighbourhood Networks. So I think that kind of what you were saying earlier, that what is possible ethos, really stood out at that point. That you looked at this and thought, yeah, we could try this and we could find out what happens, and we can find some of our network members who want to take part, and let's give it a go. And that really, from our point of view, absolutely was such an important connection to make with, you know, such a fantastic group of people. And that first group was superb. That first group was one of the best groups I've ever run, actually. I still think back to them. I still use their photos and presentations, and I still use their quotes, and I still use the things that they taught me, because I was very new at that point as well. These guys were teaching me as much as I was maybe showing them things. And from that group, you know, all this has blossomed. This is, you know, we've taken those lessons and we've taken those session plans that we developed with those guys, because it was in those early days very much a sort of co-development thing. You know, like I say, I was being taught as much as I was teaching, and we've taken these kind of processes and these rules and these lessons that we've learned, and we've run with them. We've now delivered to hundreds of individuals over thousands of sessions. We've taken the Wild Ways Well model to Europe. You know, we've taken it, we've got people emulating us down in England, we've got people emulating us in places on the continent. You know, this has become a really amazing thing, and it's, you know, all down to that little starter in Cumbernauld with those 6 people who came out with me and took a little chance to try something a little bit different. So I think from that point of view, that kind of networking is so important, and that kind of building up that local knowledge of, because I couldn't have done that. I couldn't have gone out and found, as someone who, you know, isn't local at Cumbernauld, I couldn't have gone out and found 6 people or a group of people on my own who would have done that. TCV couldn't do that on our own as an organisation, but by partnering with Neighbourhood Networks, by opening up those sort of links to people who are really deeply embedded in the community, that was the key, and that was the most important thing that happened, I think. Beyond the kind of, I think we all had a great time in the sessions, but beyond that, that kind of proving that this model could work, that by partnering with these different organisations, it would make a big difference. And yeah, that's kind of the background to kind of everything that we did. Everything that we do now comes from that background. I'm just trying to think of, there was something I was going to say about the sort of evaluation model as well. That's something else Neighbourhood Networks have really helped us with, is working on these kind of, how do we prove that these things work? Again, we can't do that. It's not my place to tell participants that this works. It's their place to tell me that this works, or it doesn't, in fact. And Neighbourhood Networks, again, were really important in that. They actually really shaped our evaluation model that we use. The initial evaluation of that first group that I did with people with Neighbourhood Networks, the initial evaluation model we used, it came back at the end of the group were less happy at the end of the sessions than they were at the start of the sessions, which showed us immediately that our evaluation model didn't work. And by talking to the group, we worked out why it didn't work and why they were feeling that way. And it was really, really important to everything that we did going forward. So yeah, I think that's kind of my background. That's kind of my first experience with Neighbourhood Networks, and it's a partnership that continues to this day. And it's something I'm very proud to say that I work with Neighbourhood Networks, and hopefully we'll continue working into the future.
Thank you so much, Paul. Well, the feeling's mutual and we're delighted to hear that. And obviously we're really looking forward to it on Saturday. This Saturday coming, we've actually got an event where we're going to be tree planting at Seafer Wood in Cumbernauld. Paul, you've got quite big aspirations for 600 trees, I understand. we have
I'm 600.
Sure plenty of people to come and plant some trees for the project. We're delighted to be involved in that. So thank you very much for sharing that. So I wondered if there's any kind of questions from any of the attendees or anybody wants to ask anything of the panel just now before we have a bit of a further discussion about networking. Not sure
So there's no questions in at the moment. Hopefully people will start putting questions in the chat now, but can I just say a big huge shout out to some of our colleagues from New Zealand who are still here, even although it must be 1:30 in the morning.
Wow.
So well done to them for the stamina to keep going.
Fantastic, fantastic. So I suppose what I wanted to have was just a kind of general discussion about networking and what we think are the elements that make it work, but the elements that kind of get in the way. And Claire, you talked about barriers and things in communities there. I wonder if anybody wants to come in with the kind of negative side. What are experience of barriers to effective networking? Stephanie, you've got your hand up. Stephanie, you're muted. Oh, that's it. You're sorted.
I don't know if I've lowered my hand. I don't normally use Zoom, so apologies if I haven't lowered my hand. So to some of the negatives, I would say, in terms of what would block effective networking for me, because obviously you asked us about this, and I thought about this on Sunday, and I think it's time and lack of opportunity. So at the moment, I know in my own service, because we are working with providers not having capacity to provide care because they're going through a lot of difficulty in recruitment. Our own staffing resources is an issue. Service users and carers are really in a time where they really need our support. And we need to find new ways to do things because the old way isn't going to work anymore. So I think time is we're so busy firefighting a lot of the time. I know certainly I can only speak about my own service, that it can prevent opportunities. It can block that time. I think with the Falkirk Collaborative, even though things have been really, really busy, we have always made that time to do things, and that's why it's worked. I think not speaking up and not sharing, and essentially just poor communication, inward thinking. I think that's a problem, and not listening can be a real block to effective networking. I mean, just what Paul said there, you were talking about everything that you've learned from neighbourhood networks and that kind of sharing. And I think that's our relationship with neighbourhood networks has also been very much about one of just equal opportunity, sharing information. And you hit the nail on the head earlier on when you said, Heather, that we share the load, and we really do. And it is equal partners at the table, and it's really, really good. It works really well.
Absolutely, Stephanie. I would agree with that entirely. Claire, did you want to come in here with just your experience of kind of blocks with networking?
Yeah, I was going to mention what Stephanie said, time is a big factor, and because there's a lot of pressures put on people because of the impact of COVID, but also when I reflect back pre-COVID, one of the big blocks for us was people not being sure of us. We were a brand new service in the Falkirk area, so we're well established in other areas across the west of Scotland, but coming into Falkirk, there was a few charities local who were like, who the new kids on the block, are they going to take over? And I found that challenging at first because maybe people didn't understand the model, or again they thought they were coming in to take over their services. And a way that I overcame that again is what Stephanie was saying earlier, communication. That is key. If you're sharing what it is you're doing right from the very beginning and involving people, so like, listen, come and have a look, see what we're doing, how can we work together, instead of having those barriers up straight away that we don't want to work together. And I think that's something that's really important to bear in mind, because again, there is people that you'll come across who maybe don't want to be involved with the service, but if you're given every opportunity to allow that relationship to develop, then it makes it easier for everybody involved, but most importantly members, because members in the local community or members in the network have choice. They have a choice of whether they want to participate in different groups, and I think it's essential that everybody is aware of what is in their local community and spreading the word.
Paul, what about yourself? Is there anything in your experience? You described a kind of a block in the early days with Cumbernauld about trying to get the work off the ground. Was there anything that kind of springs to mind that kind of got in the way of you guys networking at that time?
I think there's two major things. I guess one positive and one negative. I think one of the negatives that we found with networking is information overload. There's so much going on, and it's so difficult to find out exactly, what's available, what's happening, what's appropriate. We found that extremely difficult, and that I think comes down to it can't be replicated in any other way than this kind of face-to-face conversation. We've tried all sorts of, websites and magazines and different ways of kind of distributing information, and it just so quickly becomes out of date, and you can't really replace that word of mouth, people who know. So whether that is members of your networks, whether that's members of our staff, whether that's the people we talk to, it's the community leaders that we talk to, it's the other community groups that we talk to, those sort of conversations that go on are so important just for knowing what's happening and what can I get involved in. And that really, again, as a newcomer to an area, can be really, really difficult to tap into that thing. I know there are moves in all sorts of areas to try and make that better now, but it is very difficult as a newcomer coming in to sort of tap into that network without being overloaded with just things that you can't get involved with. So I think that is one of the biggest lessons we learned in the early days, is that you need to really consult your local community and find out what they know. And that's kind of back to that, I think what Stephanie was saying, you can't come in with this rigid idea of what you're going to do. You have to work with the people you're going to work with and change what you're going to. If we come in with a rigid model of what we want to deliver and said, this is how we're going to deliver it, it's going to be no other way, then we would have been finished in the first 6 months. You have to come in with that idea of flexibility. You have to be willing to talk to people. You have to be willing to change your plans and change your ideas as you go on. And that's, for me, is networking. That's facilitating. And that's working with people rather than standing outside and shouting, this is what I'm going to do, because you won't get anywhere.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think a probably very basic thing is just about being warm and welcoming as well. I mean, I think that makes all the difference as well. And I go back to the kind of Ihop, the collaborative work that we've done. I think both Claire and I would agree that we felt very warmly welcomed to that group of people right from the word go. That was an enticement to keep connected and keep motivated to be part of it. That makes a massive difference, because I would probably say in my working life, quite mixed experiences of that in different places I've gone where you haven't felt there's maybe been a bit of rivalry or something. So being warm and welcoming makes a big difference. But also going back to Stephanie's point about time as well, time to truly engage. And that's certainly something that's coming back from the PAMIS work, working with families and people who support people with complex needs. They need time to really engage, to really find out if something fits for them, and to be able to influence what's on offer, to adapt so that that person continue to feel welcomed and develop themselves. So time is precious. Are there any elements that we think just really work for networking that, in your experience? I mean, I would say, for one, cake. Coffee, cake and hospitality, where you've got a bit of a budget for it, can really help. Definitely. Stephanie, you've got your hand up.
Thanks, Heather. I would agree with definitely a warm welcome that you talked about there. And I just think, I think a lot about when I'm working with service users and in learning disability services as well. And that is a part of almost of networking. We really work on a relationship-based practice model with a lot of our service users who have complex needs, dual diagnosis. And that is often what prevents huge risks, is that piece of work, that relationship that we have with our service users. And I think we can extend that to the relationship that we have with our colleagues, the relationship that we have with our key stakeholders, our key partners. And something that I always take back, you know, and down to my kind of core values and beliefs. And I think what my mother taught me was just to be kind to people. And actually it's a huge thing. And be open, be honest. That trust that we have really supports that relationship that we build with, you know, within the collaborative. We've had that, there's trust. People say they're going to do something, they do it, and they support, and that sharing the load is actually, you know, I'll do that task, you do this task, and it's done. And that does build trust. And I think, you know, what Paul was talking about, being open, being flexible, that if things don't work, listening to each other, asking questions, and being willing to try something new. And we certainly have a lot of humor in our collaborative group. We laugh a lot. There's dogs, there's kids in the background, you know, and it's just
sometimes
humor,
both.
I think. Absolutely. And I think humor as well, even in my practice, you know, I think in a very serious, you know, sometimes the work can be very, very serious and can be very worrying, some things that are happening for people. And actually at the root of that, even in our practice in social work and health, having humor, having kindness, having a human approach, it's person-centered, adapting your approach to who you're working with as well at the time. I think it's really important. So I suppose in terms of the elements that, you know, that make relationship building, you know, work, it is those kind of core values, and it is the core values of neighbourhood networks as well. You know, the openness, the kindness, and the warm welcome.
Thanks, Stephanie. Claire, what about your experience? What's working with the Connecting Together group and sort of helping those relationships build?
Yeah, I think echoing obviously both what Paul and Stephanie has said there, but as well, a big thing for me is invested interest. People need to buy in to make things work, and if there's no buy-in, then there's no point. And I think that's where me and Fiona have set out from the onset, is that everybody is part of this group, so people need to share the load. It can't just fall down to me and Fiona all the time. And I think because we've been honest at the start, and we've said, like, the more you put into it, the more we're going to get out of it. That's actually really helped. So me and Fiona set up the group, we set up the meeting, but then a subgroup's formed because of the drama work that they're wanting to participate in. And again, it's for people who are specifically interested. It's not everybody has to attend it. And because we're like Stephanie was saying earlier, allowing for that flexibility, people have the choice of what it is that they want to get involved in. And that's what's great, because it's people's passions. So, for example, the drama workshop, we've got individuals, there's a lady on it that used to be an actress and now she runs a drama school, so she's leading with that. Somebody else is sharing their premises for free. So that's happened organically. And that's something that I think is really important. And again, echoing kindness, a smile, and listening. That is what we have to do. If we listen, and again, it's not just to our stakeholders, our main people as our members as well, and the local community. If we can involve people from across the board, because effectively we're trying to make people's lives better. And it's not just within the health and social care partnership that we're doing that, it's all aspects of the local community. And if we can help bridge the gaps with other organisations and bringing people together, it's definitely going to be very worthwhile. So yeah, that's my piece on that.
Thank you, Claire. I was going to say that human connection makes the difference. And for me, again, although Zoom can be hit or miss, and dogs and children and Wi-Fi issues and stuff, there's something about maybe using Zoom and through the pandemic that people have really opened up and been themselves. And I think that makes relationship building much easier when you hear other people have other challenges going on that impact in their life and things, and that kind of openness to be human and to not get it right all the time and to struggle sometimes. I think that's really helped with relationship building too. We're all in it together, and that's the kind of sense you get when you've got a really effective group. You're in it together, you know. So does anyone else have anything else they want to kind of add to the discussion? I've kind of jotted in lots of words I think that are really important. I'll read them out, but Stephanie, do you want to come in with something?
Yeah, just to kind of on the back of what Claire was saying, I think it's so true, is I think with networking, you're able to find people, you know, through that discussion, through talking to people. My children always say, I talk too much, Mum. You talk to everybody. You know, we watch on the street, I'm talking to everyone. Again, another thing I inherited from my mother. But talking to people, you're learning and listening about them, you find, you know, I have found different people in different parts of the Falkirk HICP and in the wider community that actually I'm like, oh, well, that would be really good, you know. And I think you're speaking, you know, there, Claire, about the Roots group and the drama and all of, you know, all that work. And through changing places, we came across these particular ladies that were doing a lot of work in their own communities, and they shared some of that with us. So it's just, I think, getting out there, getting out of your office and getting out and speaking to people is the best thing, and making those connections. So it's sometimes easier said than done, but it goes, and I think in my job especially, I really need to do that. It's really important to connect with other people.
So I've jotted down some words from our discussion that I thought might be useful to share. So listening comes out really strongly. Reciprocity, sharing the load, valuing, being generous, being kind, being welcoming, open-minded, co-developing. So you're listening and responding and flexing and adapting, having local knowledge and local connections, tapping into people's passions. I thought that was really good, Claire, and vested interest. So I think those are good words and kind of good mantras, I think, for us to kind of move forward with our networking. Does anyone else have anything they want to kind of add to the discussion before I just kind of wrap things up? I've just got a couple of slides that I thought might be helpful to share or talk from. Paul, you're muted. Sorry, Paul.
I can't come to something like this without pushing our message. One of the best things you can do for these sort of things is take your networking outside. And I can't emphasize that enough. Some of the best feedback I've got, and it's from one of the neighbourhood networks groups, is the people saying, I can talk out here. When we go out into the woods, we can talk. You know, you remove that power structure, you remove that kind of fear of the office space and of the desks and chairs and computers. And I know it's Scotland and I know it's raining most of the time, but there are nice things and you can't get outside, and honestly it makes a massive difference. Every single one of these well sessions involves sitting out in the woods with a cup of tea, chatting to each other. And whilst we're doing that for, you know, the benefit of people's mental well-being, what we're really doing is networking with each other. And I just go outside.
That's a great point to close on. And I think, Stephanie, maybe for our collaborative, maybe we should do some of a session where we're outside over a cup of coffee at the least. Maybe take that to our next meeting.
Absolutely. I was just thinking that.
That's a brilliant idea. Brilliant idea. I'm aware that the chat is very quiet, so we're actually not sure if it's working terribly well. I don't know, Dawn, if you've managed to kind of decipher if are people just very quiet and in awe of what we're saying?
I think people are just very quiet. I've done a couple of tests and signed in as an attendee, and it's there and it's fine. And in fact, Laura's just answered as well there.
Yes.
So yeah, I think we've just got a quiet bunch of attendees today.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to open up the floor to our attendees for any kind of comments or final questions before we end this session. No, I think we're quite, as you said, a quiet bunch. So I'm going to share a slide with you, and it's just about Neighbourhood Networks values. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, let's just get this to work. And this is Neighbourhood Networks core values, and I thought this was incredibly important in terms of the conversation of effective relationship building and networking. And one of our statements: everyone should have the opportunity, encouragement, support and training to be actively involved in the development of the organisation. So for that's about investing in people and creating space for people to contribute and be listened to. And then finally, we can all be involved in making where we live, work and socialise a better place. And that's one of our core values. And I think that says all about that whole vested interest. We've all got a vested interest in connection and relationship building to make all our lives better. Okay. So can I thank our panel very much for your time and your contribution. That was a really good discussion. about networking and shared experiences. I think Falkirk is a special place in many respects in terms of our positive relationships. And likewise, as I said, Paul, we've got amazing memories and lots of future things to come with TCV that we're delighted to be involved in. Okay, and then we've a final comment from Matt from New Zealand. Thank you, thanking us. That was interesting. Okay. So thank you very much, everyone. And just another plug for the rest of our conference. Please get yourself signed up. We've got another 8 events, and we've got our Stay Up Late event on Thursday night if people want to kick off, listen to some music, hear some comedy and relax a bit. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.